Hi, I'm Josh Welton from Brown Dog Welding, and right now we're going to go through a how-to on building a money clip. There's going to be some improvisation because when you get in your shop, you don't need to go out and buy a bunch of fancy tools. You just make what you have work, and that's what we're going to do today. So with that being said, let's get started. All right, the first step, we're going to take this piece of stainless steel. I'm using a piece of 1/8" stainless for the clip itself. It's oversized a little bit because the colors are, well, the colors of the weld come, there's a lot of different things that are involved with that. Heat, material, gas coverage, length of post flow, arc length. I mean, you can go on and on and on. But one of the things is heat, and so to control the heat, I'm using a piece of steel that's a little bit bigger than what we're going to end up with, just to show you. You can see here's a clip that I made, and it's a little bit smaller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the design in this space, and then I'll trim it down. But to keep it flat for now, what I'm going to do is take this 1/8" piece of steel, and I'm going to tack weld it to this 1/4" piece of steel. That'll keep the stainless piece flat. I like using a smaller piece of thicker backing material because then I can move it around, so I can get the kind of the angle or the set the piece where it's comfortable to weld at. If you tack it to a table, you're not going to be able to move the piece around. If you tack it to a huge piece, it's just going to make it more difficult to work with. So I like taking a relatively small piece and then tacking the material to it. I like using the Scotch Brite because you're not going to embed any contaminants into the stainless steel, so your stainless will stay corrosion resistant. All right, so we got the surface prepped, we got it cleaned up. What I'm going to do now is lay out the design. You can freehand the design. I've done that before to make things kind of easy to get the proportions right. What I did this time is I went online and I found clip art of an American flag. So we're going to do an American flag design, and I'm actually just going to tape it right to the surface and then use that as my template to lay out the actual clip design. As you get into more complex designs, you'll kind of figure out kind of the order you need to do to lay something out. So you know where to put weld, where not to put weld. But you got to start somewhere, and this is a very simple design to start with. All right, what we're going to do now is we're going to punch out the stars. In the past, I've actually used a starter tap and just done little holes, little dots, and it looks all right. I've drilled them out before; it looks okay. But I actually ordered this online. It was like $9 for. I think they use it for jewelry or whatever. But it's a little 1/8", or it might be even smaller, like a 1/16" star shape. So I'm going to punch these stars out, and I'll do that before we lay out the stripes. All right, to lay out the lines, I'm going to use this. It's basically a part etcher. Dremel makes them. They're not too expensive. You can scribe out the lines too by hand. You know, get creative. If you don't have this, you can use another tool. You can even, if you're really careful, you can use a cutoff wheel to do it. But basically, I want to leave an imprint on the metal so I can use that to follow with the weld. Like I said, you could do it with marker. I've done it with marker before, but you risk A, not being able to see the line all that well, and B, actually contaminating the surface of the weld. So we got that lined out. I'm going to take the paper off here. And now we have basically the stars as they're going to be, and then the lines as we're going to weld over them. So I'm going to take another fine Scotch Brite, pass over it just to get some of the gunk out of the inside of those lines, and then we will weld. All right, we're going to start welding the stripes here. What I'm using for a filler is 045 stainless. It's actually a MIG wire that I cut into lengths. I believe you can buy the filler in a smaller length, but the MIG wire is more common, so typically it's easier to come across. It just gives us, it's easier to run a smaller bead using the smaller MIG wire. We're using a Dynasty 210, the Dynasty series. They're the gold standard for TIG machines. It's what I use on a day-to-day basis. One of the things I've learned over the years from doing my TIG designs with weld beads is that the progression of your beads, the order, kind of influences the color that comes out. I kind of screwed up. I was just getting excited about welding, and I started at the top here. What I wanted to do was start with, well, what would be technically the top stripe of the flag, but the bottom stripe for my direction. And I want to start with this and then go here, then here, then here, then here. And that actually keeps the colors a little bolder. So I'm gonna leave that because it is what it is, but I'm gonna start down here running this bead next, and then I will progress towards the bottom of the flag. All right, if you'll notice when I get to the end of the bead, obviously I keep the gas flow over the end of the weld until it's cool. What that does is it protects the weld from the atmosphere until the puddles to the point where it's cooled enough and it's not sucking in the nitrogen and the oxygen. Actually, when you're doing artistic stuff like that, you can play with it. You can do, you can even go up to no post flow or just pull the cup away and see what it does, see what it adds, you know, color-wise to your piece. All right, so I'd like to say that I did this on purpose, but it was just sort of a mental lapse. But it proves as an illustration to the point I made earlier. To keep the colors bright, to keep the beads bright, you want to travel from the top down. So you weld this bead on top, then that one, then the next one. Maybe give it a little bit of time to cool in between. But you see, once I laid this bead right here, where the bottom bead already was, the heat from this one dulled the colors on this bead right here. So to keep it bright, you want to go from the top down as you were. All right, now while the welds from the flag are cooling, what we're going to do is we're going to make the back clip. Here's a couple of examples of ones that I kind of mocked up. But to get the length, you're going to want to go a little bit shorter than the actual clip's going to be, or the front of the clip's going to be. So it's going to be by feel. All right, so we're going to move this out of the way. First thing is we're going to take this, it's kind of a, it's a, what do you want to call it? You know, you experiment with different sizes, what will give you spring back, but that you can still, you know, you can still play with the tension. So what I've come to start using is this 16th inch stainless. I'm not sure exactly what gauge, but it's around 16th inch. So we're going to lay this out and then put some bends into it, and then we will use it on the clip. So first thing first, I'm going to, usually I start with just about 1 inch wide or maybe less. On a combination square, the rule is actually about 1 inch wide, so it makes it nice. So I'll just actually adjust this to just about 2 inch, and then I will take this marker and lay it out. So that's what we're going to start with. We've got basically a 1 inch by 2 inch square rectangle shape that we're going to cut out. All right, so Usually in my shop I have a vertical bandsaw, and I'll use that to cut out the piece. Here we don't, so I have my 4.5-inch angle grinder with a 4-inch cutoff wheel, and I have the piece of stainless clamped to the workstation or the art station. So it's, again, you just improvise and you use whatever you have around. So that's what I'm doing. I have this clamped here, so I'm going to cut out this rectangular shape that's going to make up the back of the money clip. Put my earplugs in. All right, so now we've got the basic blank shape, and I'm going to put a little curvature into it before we bend it. So what I'm going to do is, I usually use whatever I have laying around to mark little rounded edges and then sand those down. So I have this chunk of steel laying here. And you know what? It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be exactly symmetrical. Again, it adds to the uniqueness, and it doesn't really, I don't think it takes away from the piece. I mean, if you wanted to spend hours laying it out and getting it exactly right, that's your prerogative. You can do that, and that can be your style. All right, so now I put a flat disc on my 4.5-inch grinder, and I'm going to use that to give a little shape to the clip. All right, so I created this little fixture real quick just out of scrap metal, and what it's going to allow me to do is put several bends in the money clip. I took a little piece of flat stock and welded it in the middle of, what is it, 2-inch, 1.5-inch angle iron. And that gives me just that little bit of a spot there where I can take a, what should I do on this side? Take, this pipe is like 1 1/4 diameter. It's not that big of a deal that it's exact. But I'm going to set it right there, and I'm going to pop it. And then that gives me a little bend right there. Now I'm going to put another bend on this side. Kind of square it up to the angle. Let me give it a little bit more. All right, so we've got, the flag has cooled down now, so I'm gonna cut the tacks. You can see it kept the plate straight, so it did its job. So I'm gonna cut the tacks, and then we're gonna line out the outside of the flag and cut that out too. All right, what I like to do when I'm lining these out is I'll make one straight edge, and then I'll line up the other lines off that one straight. And then when you sand it down, make it a little bit big, and then when you can sand it down and give it the shape you want. None of mine are typically perfectly square or rectangle. It's all about look. It doesn't have to, I learned early on with doing art and sculpture, it's not about being exact, it's about looking right. And at some point you have to trust your eyes that it's gonna be a cool looking piece. So I'm gonna line these out with a Sharpie here quick. We'll start with the star side of the flag. And again, oversize it a little bit so you can kind of grind it down to shape. All right, now for the next thing, we're going to put a little curve into the clip. It just makes it feel a little bit better in the hand, and it adds to when you put the back to it, it adds a little bit to the clamping ability. But it looks cool. It's just you know, add a little bit of character to it. So I don't want to mark up the welded surface. So what I'll do is I usually take an old glove and I'll put it down, and then I'll set the piece on top of it. I do this with belt buckles too. Although I used a different mechanism to bend them, I still use the glove to protect the welded surface. So I got this big piece of pipe, which, what is it, like 2 3/8. I'm going to set it right there in the middle. I'm just going to pop it a little bit. And that was not enough, so we'll do that again. And that was enough. Even it out a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect. So now it gave it a little bit of a curve. All right, what I'm going to do is before I weld the clip to the back, I'm going to clean the back of the flag so it welds a little bit nicer. That heat comes through unless you want to purge the back, or actually even just on a backing plate, it's not bad. Just going to clean it up before we weld it. I'm using a soft stainless steel wire brush so that you don't introduce any contaminants into the stainless steel, so you won't have any oxidization problems in the future. Because you're going to be wearing it in your pocket, there's going to be sweat, and you know, it may, depending on the grade of stainless you're using or the metal you're using, you might get a little something coming through. But the cool thing about metal is you can always mess with it. So like this piece that I did, the Punisher piece, when I started this, it was full of color. After a while, what the color is it's actually a layer of oxidization. So after a while, with wear and tear, that color starts to fade. So you just kind of get a second buckle or a second clip out of it. It gets a new life. So if you're doing this and you like the color, it'll last for a while. Eventually, it'll dull, and then you get a polished one or a brushed one. So that's just a little something to think about for down the road. So now, here's the trick, and this is the fun part. To get it to bend and to keep it strong, what I do is I'll actually set it on the end that I want it, and I'll give myself maybe 1/8 of an inch to weld that right there. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to weld the inside of it. And then what that allows me to do is get a nice weld there, and then I'll actually hammer it down and weld this side of it. So you got full weld on both sides, and it gives you a little tension, which we'll get to later. All right, so we got the shape, we have the two curves. What I like to have is the side that we're going to weld is flat. The side that's going to hold the money down is got a little bit of a curve to it. And then this is the direction we're going to go, so that you've got this piece right here is going to put tension on the money and keep it in place. Again, mess with it, how deep you want the curves, what kind of radius you want, but it's not an exact science, it's play it by ear. So what I did is I grabbed this chunk of square tubing, and I'm going to use that to hold this where I want it while I tack it in place. Sometimes if you set it up right, you don't even have to clamp it. You can just kind of let it sit there and while you tack the edges. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tack the edges of this. All right, so now we've got the inside of the back of the clip welded, and I'm going to fold it over. Sometimes what I do to keep this space right here when I fold it is I'll just take like I've got a bolt, like a 1/4 inch bolt. I'll just put it in there so that you don't smush it down all the way flat. It still keeps some of that shape. Again, I'm using an old glove to keep the welded surface from getting marred up too bad. I'll actually start it by bending it by hand. Then I get my leather hammer. Actually, it's kind of a rubber smashing hammer. So now you've got the inside welded and the outside needs to be welded. So I'm going to take a wire wheel and clean that up and run that bead. And this will pull back a little bit because of that heat. But we're still not done adjusting that, so it's not a big deal. So now we've got this clip, and it's basically done. Everything's there. The big thing you're going to find is adjusting the tension, and that's kind of the trick that everyone asks about, and there's no science to it. Basically, push it all the way down, then you can take a screwdriver or a pry bar, kind of flex it out a little bit, push it down. Eventually, you're going to get one that'll adjust. You know, you'll be able to pull it apart a little bit with your hand and push it back in. And it depends on the amount of money you carry. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up quick so we can see the finished product. All right, so here we've got it done. We've got the back side smooth. I put some money in it. It's holding it nicely. I like to fold my money like this, just if it's better in my pocket. But the edges are nice and smooth, and that's it. It's not too difficult, and again, you know, no matter what level you're at, whether you're a beginner or you've been doing it for years, it allows you to put kind of your skills to the test and your artistic flavor to the test. And so if you want to know more about what I do, you can go to browndogwelding.com, or you can find me at Welder Assassin on Instagram, Brown Dog Welding on Instagram, Brown Dog Welding on Facebook, Brown Dog Welding on Twitter. And if you want to know anything more about this machine, go to millerwelds.com, and you will be able to find information on this and their whole series of Dynasty welders and every other machine they make. Plus, they've got all the user manuals, and they've got a forum for sharing ideas. So really cool website. And so my final tip for today is money clips are all about showing off. You want to walk into the club, you got your Benjamins, and you just go, hey, what's up? Make it rain.